2 dead in a terrible accident on the coastal. But why were 22 people loaded up inside a van with seating for only 10? And the contractor general, victim of a ruthless home invasion and carjacking. We show you his vehicles as the thieves drove off with them headed for Guatemala. Plus home invasion in Private Haven. We'll tell you how an Australian expat had to duck and roll as pirates loaded up his house with lead. Also, Dr. Manzanero offered a letter of demotion. Will he sign it? Plus, BTL profits plummet. We'll take you to the phone company's AGM. And a land dispute in Landiver. How did someone buy a quarter acre in the sea for only $2,000? We asked the area rep. We've got details of these and other stories in our newscast for tonight, Monday, February 22nd, 2021. Good evening. With your news, I'm Vera Craig.
Start your year with a win with Bellikin and its new promotion, Papa Stopper. Yes, sir. Every time you pop one stopper off our Bellikin, make sure you check under the crown. If you see one bottle shape, you win one free Bellikin. If you see one ball, you win $20. If you see one star, you win $100. And once you see one diamond, you win $1,000. Sure, Bellikin again, you know. Papa Stopper. When you pop a stopper off a Bellikin, check to see if you're a winner. You can collect your free beer or $20 cash prize at the store nearest to you. If you win $100 or $1,000, redeem your prize at the nearest B&B sales center.
Promotion is valid until Saturday, March 27th or while supplies last.
Papa Stopper!
Bellikin, the beer of Belize.
If you have been directly exposed to the new coronavirus or have a history of travel in infected populated areas, it is recommended that you self-isolate. Identify a room to be used to self-isolate and limit contact with healthy persons. Keep away from older persons and persons who have medical conditions that affects their immune system. Monitor for any cold or flu-like symptom for up to 21 days and wash hands frequently with soap and water. If you become seriously ill, call your healthcare provider or 0800-664-2273 for guidance. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
In partnership with the British High Commission.
You've worked hard your whole life building your future, your family, your business, your home. And when you aren't around to safeguard your most beloved assets, you are at ease because you know they are protected by RF&G Insurance. For over 50 years, RF&G has been making sure business owners get back to work after an accident, and families get back into their homes quickly after a natural disaster. At RF&G, it's you who matters most. Visit us today and learn why it pays to get it right. RF&G Insurance, a Rowe Group company.
At Benquip, we offer a complete line of Honda products featuring the most trusted and reliable line of motorcycles in Belize. For outdoor and marine recreation, we have Polaris ATVs and UTVs, Volvo Pentamarine Solutions, Honda Outboards, and Best Sport Kayaks. When it's time to service your vehicle or equipment, you can find the brands you trust at Benquip. We carry a large inventory of Castrol oils, NGK spark plugs, and a full range of cleaning products from Magic. Get power when you need it with trade winds and Honda generators. For those businesses looking for increased productivity and a safe working environment, our proven and respective line of TCM forklifts will not let you down. We also have trimmers and lawnmowers from Honda and Husqvarna, so you can keep your yard and surroundings properly maintained. So visit Benquip today at 3 miles on the Philip Golson Highway to get the equipment, parts, and service you need.
Tonight we start with the tragic death of a teenage mother-to-be. 18-year-old Janet McNabb was 6 months pregnant and couldn't wait to give birth. But that dream was crushed after a road traffic accident took her life and that of her unborn child. The accident also claimed the life of another child, 12-year-old Leah Valencia, who died shortly after McNabb. It was a family affair gone horribly wrong on Saturday afternoon while traveling at mile 16 on the coastal road, when the van they were traveling in violently flipped. Courtney Menzies has a story of how an overloaded van may have contributed to this coastal calamity.
This was the scene of a car crash that stole 3 lives, one of whom never took their first breath. And you hear the father-to-be frustratingly pleading for everyone to put down the cameras and help his pregnant girlfriend. But any help would likely have been futile because 18-year-old Janet McNabb passed away before reaching the hospital. Her mother is now grappling with losing a second child, and her boyfriend is coming to terms with losing his girlfriend of 1 year and his unborn baby. McNabb's cousin held back tears as she vented her annoyance at those who videoed instead of rendering assistance.
The moment when we get the news, everybody broke down, you know, because, like, I feel like my cousin, my young, for the way how she did, she never deserved that, you know, that hurt Halloween. The way how people video it and post it on Facebook, that don't make no sense because I always see accidents happen, but I never ever believe it may happen to my little cousin. We know we can deal with this right now, like, it was hard for me to forget my cousin because he never live it. We but nearly every day she there. Every time she boring home, she come out, she can't enjoy. When they want to eat something in the corner, we uncle buy this to me. I'll treat me to this. The last thing I treat her to me, I'll cold cake him out. He said she feel for cold cake.
McNabb was on her way to Belize after attending a function for her boyfriend's family in Dangriga. The van, which only contained 10 seats, was at over 200% capacity with 22 people inside. And up to this morning, the family still had no idea how the accident happened. But today, the police filled in some blanks.
The van was coming from Dangriga heading to the Democracia Junction when at some point the van overturned. There are several factors that we're investigating. Again, yes, that is an area that has loose gravel and a lot of stones. At the scene, yes, we saw that 2 of the tires were blown out from the van.
Was the van of an adequate size to hold 22 people?
That is being investigated, as we know that they have certain seating capacity that should be at 75%. That is part of the investigation. At the conclusion of the investigation, we will determine the charges.
And while the family now has answers to what happened, they're still questioning why her. Her cousin said that McNabb went everywhere with her, and now there is an empty space missing from their lives.
Well, everybody know Janet, or know about Janet, because she up on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everything. So everybody know about Janet. Maybe I don't know her personally, but so we know she personally, like, she have her ways, you know, like, she want to have her own way. She think she that a bigger cousin. She think she older than. She want to tell me what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and you know, stuff like that. We have our differences at times, you know. But other than that, my cousin, she's a nice person, you know. And she'll be ignorant, right? And we like to like, girl, you are turning granny before your time, or you look old and thing like that. And she would have suck her teeth or laugh, you know, and thing. But she's a nice girl, you know. And she really left a hole in our hearts, because we not get over this right now, you know.
She seems to be so lively.
Yeah, she is. And I'm excited about the pregnancy, you know. Happy to be a ma. And then no, this just happened, but it need to be a bit of everything.
But McNabb and her boyfriend never got the chance to find out the baby's gender together.
She does always say she not get pregnant right now, but you know everybody say that. She need me one, I get pregnant. She always tell me, no, wait till you done do this and go and finish what you need to do. But she me excited about her pregnancy. She me really want to be a mom. Today she me find out if that me a girl or a boy me I have. I me going for ultrasound.
Shortly after McNabb's death, 12-year-old Leah Valencia, who was also in the van, passed away as well. Courtney Menzies, 7 News.
Most of the passengers were treated and released, except for a 3-year-old child who had both hands broken and an estimated 3 other passengers who were taken to the KHMH. The driver of the vehicle, 32-year-old Oscar Gonges Jr., has refused to give police a urine sample and will be charged for failure to give a sample. With 22 people in the vehicle, many of them children, if you estimate each passenger weight on average of 100 pounds, the Ford Econoline van would have been carrying about a metric ton in passenger weight. The next 3 stories are about home invasions in 3 different parts of the country. One on a coastal island, the other in an inland village, and third in a western municipality. We start out west, where the Contractor General Omar Mitchell, who holds one of the most senior constitutionally enshrined posts in the country, was sprayed upon in his home by armed bandits. It happened early on Sunday morning at his estate home just outside San Ignacio. Jules Vasquez has the story.
On Sunday morning at 7, Omar Mitchell was at home here at his property just outside San Ignacio town at mile 2 on the Benqueviejo Road when he heard his dogs making a ruckus. He went outside to see what was provoking them, and that's when he was ambushed.
He was alone at home, but he eventually opened his back door and went out to investigate what the dogs were barking at. And during that same time, he was approached by a male person who managed to struggle with him and put him on the ground, where that person were joined by 4 other individuals. They then escorted him inside his home, where he was bounded and left in some room inside his home, whilst his home was ransacked.
The next thing he heard was the sound of his 2 vehicles rolling off the property. This blue Toyota Hilux is one of them, and the other is a blue Toyota Prado. At 7:25 a.m., they can be seen here. First the Hilux, then the Prado, heading west on the Benque Road towards the border.
We have been able to follow some information that later on in the morning of yesterday, those vehicles may have been seen going across into Guatemala through Arenal.
The 69-year-old Mitchell was injured with a cut above the eye and left traumatized. And it's not the first time it has happened. He was carjacked for the same vehicle in 2012, but the police recovered it. Now that it's happening again, is it just a coincidence?
Well, we are following several leads. However, we're not been able to connect that as yet, as the investigation is in its early stage.
The brazen home invasion has shaken and scared the San Ignacio community. The commissioner says it's a reality of the times.
The fact that we're seeing that more and more people are becoming unemployed due to the pandemic, it surely is a recipe for crime to increase, particularly property crimes.
Very, very distressing, I am certain, for the contractor general. And so we definitely empathize with him, and we are doing our very best on the ground to crack down on these home invasions.
Mitchell's injuries were not life-threatening, and he was treated at a private facility. He has been contractor general for just over a year. And while Mitchell lost his 2 vehicles, an Austrian expat had his boat stolen. Indeed, it's been a harrowing weekend for Christian Gigi Gussenbauer. That's after a Friday night attack on his Larkey Range resort that left him shot to the buttocks. It happened at about 6:45 when 4 armed men approached his home and fired at him through a window. And then, in a sequence straight out of Hollywood, Gussenbauer had to duck and roll through a hail of bullets to make it to his bedroom, where he barricaded himself behind a door and mattress. And while neither of those barriers protected him from the gunshot wound he sustained, they certainly saved his life. Still, it's an ordeal that many wouldn't have lived through, with Gussenbauer's first-hand account describing the screams of the shooters as they fired round after round, leaving him terrified and standing in, quote, a lake of his own blood. Now, there are once again worries for both tourism and Belizean property markets, which often take a dive after a terrible incident such as this. But Gussenbauer has lived to tell the tale, and that's due in part to the people of Placencia Village and the spirit of community that reached out to save a life. Cherise Halsal reports.
It's quite a life for Christian Gigi Gussenbauer, an Austrian retiree and resort operator in the Larkey Range, who most days is treated to views like this. But all that nearly changed on Friday night when Christian was forced to barricade himself inside his home, daring to peep through shattered glass at the gunmen who had come to rob and perhaps kill him. It's at this point that most people would call the police. But Gigi, as he's known in Placencia, made a social media cry for help. His first post said, "Help, I get shot," followed by, "I'm shot," and then, "Police." And as desperation sets in, he asks whether anyone was coming. And it was possible that at that very moment, in the midst of a Friday night quiet dinner, that Chabilmar manager Chris Rothing saw Gigi's post.
I was working late and at my office, and I saw the post on Facebook. And my friend Christopher Rothing came running downstairs from the restaurant upstairs, and we called, and then we confirmed that it was indeed true that he has been shot. It was a really scary situation. The sea was really, really rough, and we were all soaked, including the police officers when we got there. That boat captain was an absolute rock star. So when we got there, I shined the flashlight into his bedroom window, and we saw him alive in there. So that was the biggest sigh of relief. His perspective that he said to me is if he had contacted one person directly, he had to wait for one person that may or may not have been available. He said the quickest way to get a response was to go to Facebook on his own page because he's friends with everybody. He's such a nice person. So everybody got it immediately. So instead of him having to wait for a specific person to contact him, he knew that the entire village will be on this immediately.
We got out there and I stayed on the boat with 2 police officers and the captain, while Gusto and another 2 police officers went into the house. And then when they brought Gigi back, I then stepped in as like a sort of first aid initiative and just kept him warm and held him, kept him warm and put pressure on the wounds, and then held him until we got back so that because he was cold and in shock and stuff and just needed to be held and pressure to be put on his wounds. I think it was 1 bullet that shattered into 20-something pieces, and they were only able to remove some of the pieces in the surgery.
It's an injury that's put Gusenbauer on a bumpy road to recovery. Still, he's lucky to be alive, and this morning the commissioner called him a brave soul and also commended his rescuers.
I will commend Mr. Christian himself for being the brave soul that he is. I believe that what he did largely contributed to him saving his own life, in terms of going into the bathroom, lock himself in, and was still able to go on social media despite his injury and share his experience with the world. And so we were able to get that information. And then to the police officers who responded, the sea was extremely rough that night. And the citizens who assisted the police in getting out there, despite the roughness of the sea, I think we owe them a great deal of gratitude.
I wasn't alone. I called all of my friends and all of them stepped up and everybody did their own part. I've lived in a few countries all over the world, and I have been to a few countries, and I have never seen a community pulled together like that. The feeling of everything is going to be okay. Living here, the sense of camaraderie between locals and expats and everything, that was really humbling.
The cops say that at this point, they're looking for named suspects.
But in terms of addressing the whole issue of sea piracy, just last week, we conducted a number of operations in the south, geared at going after these persons who we believe are involved in sea piracy.
Placentia is not only the peninsula, Placentia is also all of the little islands that we have out here, and all of the boat captains that we have on the water, and all of the people, the tourists that we have out on the water. And at this point, a community effort together with the backing with the government, I think it's very, very possible for us to put that together. And I think that is what needs to be focused on.
Where was the Coast Guard on Friday night? Why weren't they the first responders?
You know that the Coast Guard base is all the way in Hunting Key. And I believe there's another one on Southwater Key. Those two locations were hours away from where Mr. Christian was at the time. So saving a life was of essence. If we had waited for the Coast Guard, it would have taken too long.
But in all the joy over Gigi's rescue and seemingly successful recovery, we can't forget the heart of the story. That's Gigi's dog, Molly, who at the time of his rescue was thought dead.
I had a suspicion that the dog was not dead, because if they had shot the dog, we would have found the body. So when we didn't find the body, when we didn't find the dog, that actually gave us hope that Molly was alive. And then when we went back the following morning, that was confirmed.
I never knew the dog was alive. The information I had, the dog was dead. So being that the dog used to be a part of our family before we gave it to Mr. Gigi, I assumed the dog was dead after his information, right? So I was heading out with a shovel, literally, to hopefully find the dog's body and bury it. And apparently when I got out there on boat, me just to come out at the spot just before I arrived, who were the neighbors after they found out what happened. Then the police was there at the same time. They come up the same time, and then so the dog stayed in the mangrove because of all the commotion and what she just went through, right? So she avoided the crowd, and being that they had guns and all of the above, just like what she just went through, she stayed in the mangrove. So I stood around the police and had some words and conversation to try to figure out stuff, and then I tell them straight up that I know I leave without the dog, so I have to wait till they leave, and they were more than okay with that. And when they leave, the dog came right out of the mangroves and I sit right by the door, the owner's door, and he wouldn't move. I try to move on. You know me, right? So that was one of the best part of it all. So he wouldn't move out to literally pick her up and take her to the boat and bring her home with her frisbee, which is her favorite toy.
Cherise Halso, 7 News.
Molly is currently staying with her former family. The men who shot Gusenbauer also robbed him of an undisclosed amount of cash. The cops say that based on some of the expended shells that were retrieved from the scene, he was attacked with a 9mm pistol. Gusenbauer's boat was later found abandoned near Hopkins, but was missing its engine. And while the attack on Private Haven was seemingly spurred on by cash and a boat engine, robbers in Toledo were looking for weapons. It happened on Wednesday in Yemery Grove, which is about 7 miles outside Punta Gorda town. The head on National Crimes Investigation told us more.
On the said date, he had departed his home en route to Punta Gorda town to conduct businesses, leaving his worker or his caretaker behind guarding his home. Upon his arrival sometime around 12:30 p.m., upon approaching his home in his vehicle, he was met and accosted by 3 dark-complexioned male persons who were armed and as well as wearing masks. As a result, himself and his worker were bounded, where they were asked for and demanded as well for monies, where the home was ransacked. His licensed shotgun, which was inside his vehicle, was taken by those persons. After they had left the area, he managed to free himself, where he made his way to the chairman of the village, who then called the police, who came in to conduct an investigation into the matter, where the scene was processed. We are following several leads in respect to this investigation, but so far no one has yet been detained.
So that's 3 different home invasions in 3 different parts of the country, with each of the crime crews having their own MO, from pirates to bandits to possibly a roving gang. Today in Belmopan, we asked Commissioner Williams about this worrying pattern of crimes targeting properties.
Yes, in the case of the one in Punta Gorda town, that again is another case where a law-abiding citizen home was burglarized by bandits carrying weapons, and it is a concern to us.
When things happen outside the normal frame of violence, people become concerned that legitimate persons not operating in any gang environment are now being targeted.
I don't know what made you draw that conclusion, but persons who are not involved in gang activities have always been targeted by criminals. And you would know that we're living in extremely tough times, where a number of persons seems to be unemployed and a number of persons are desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. Now, this is no justification for anybody to want to go and commit crime, to say that because they're not working or they're hungry.
Sir, the discussion also arises as to whether citizens should begin to consider arming themselves, and more citizens begin to consider arming themselves and building capacity in dealing with defense weapons.
Well, any person can apply for a gun license. Just that not any person can get a gun license. It has a lot to do with your background and the reason for which you want the weapon. And please remember that having a gun at all times is not a saving grace. Because if it is that these culprits know that you're armed, they're going to not hesitate. Right? So even when you have a gun, you're not supposed to be out there flashing it to make it known that you have one. Because whenever you are accosted to be robbed, they think you have it on you, they're going to take you out. They're not going to give you the upper hand.
And Gusenbauer certainly didn't have the upper hand during his ordeal, but on Saturday, when he was photographed being visited by Commissioner of Police Chester Williams, many wondered if he was getting preferential treatment. When asked about it today, the Compo said that the visit was routine.
Contrary to what some people are saying on social media, that I only visited because of who the person is, that I usually visit gunshot victims at the hospital. It is something I do regularly. I speak with them and get information from them, and Mr. Christian was no different. And yes, in terms of my visit with him, we discussed about what happened. He gave some very valuable information that we're working on. And the night in question, when this incident occurred, which was Friday night, I received some screenshots of his Facebook post from a citizen who informed me of what was taking place. And right away, I got to the police and we mobilized to get on the island as quick as possible. We also contacted a person who was on an island nearby to go in before us to see what was the condition of Mr. Christian, and that person did so, gave us a synopsis of the area, and shortly thereafter the police arrived, and we transported the injured person to mainland and then to Belize City to seek medical attention.
The criticism would be that this has been happening from late January, but it has only now become a national priority because someone, a foreigner, has been victimized by it, and now it is a world-ending situation that has to stop immediately.
Well, Jules, you know, you can't stop critics, but as I said earlier, that just last week we mounted a number of operations. That itself speaks to the fact that we have been giving this a priority even before what happened to Mr. Christian. This matter went even to cabinet. This matter was discussed by the Minister of Defense and Border Security and the Minister of Home Affairs, along with the different heads of department, meaning Coast Guard, Police, and BDF. This was done last week, Tuesday, after cabinet meeting. And we put together a plan of action that we have executed, along with fisheries on board. So we have been giving this priority. So for anyone who may want to say that it's only because it happened to something happened to a tourist that we are giving it attention, then I would say to them, get their stats together.
And Compal Williams says that the police stats show that these sea pirates, possibly 3 gangs, move between Honduras and Belize, but are focusing on the south.
From what we are seeing, there are 3 groups involved. One of the group that we dealt with last week, they were charged with various fisheries offences, and then they were also charged with being a member of a gang under the Crime Control and Criminal Justice Act. And many of them were remanded to prison on Friday. But we have 2 other groups that we believe are operating within the area, and they frequent the Stan Creek district and Honduras. So it would appear as if whenever they do their crime, whatever they would steal, they take to Honduras in exchange for guns and drugs, then come back into Belize. And so this is an area we're working on. We're working in collaboration with the Belize Coast Guard, the Fisheries Department, as well as other business people within the area who are assisting the police with resources to be able to patrol the area. We have searched a number of fishing camps on different islands that we believe these thugs operate on. And we are going to continue to do that. But like I said, they don't stay in one area. They frequent between Belize and Honduras.
These men, are they known to police, and what area do you guys believe they base?
Yes, there are persons who are known to police. They are based in the Stan Creek district, primarily Dangriga, Independence, Placencia, and around that City River Hopkins area. And when they're at sea, they hang out more in the Channel Keys, Saltwater Key area, and these close islands.
And we take a break now. When we come back, we'll tell you about a land dispute in Landivar. And Dr. Manza got a letter asking him to accept a demotion. Don't go away.
At Benquip, we offer a complete line of Honda products featuring the most trusted and reliable line of motorcycles in Belize. For outdoor and marine recreation, we have Polaris ATVs and UTVs, Volvo Pentamarine Solutions, Honda Outboards, and Best Sport Kayaks. When it's time to service your vehicle or equipment, you can find the brands you trust at Benquip. We carry a large inventory of Castrol oils, NGK spark plugs, and a full range of cleaning products from Magic. Get power when you need it with trade winds and Honda generators. For those businesses looking for increased productivity and a safe working environment, our proven and respective line of TCM forklifts will not let you down. We also have trimmers and lawnmowers from Honda and Husqvarna, so you can keep your yard and surroundings properly maintained. So visit Benquip today at 3 miles on the Philip Golson Highway to get the equipment, parts, and service you need.
Start your year with a win with Bellikin and its new promotion, Papa Stopper. Yes, sir. Every time you pop one stopper off our Bellikin, make sure you check under the crown. If you see one bottle shape, you win one free Bellikin. If you see one ball, you win $20. If you see one star, you win $100. And once you see one diamond, you win $1,000. Sure, Bellikin again, you know. Papa Stopper. When you pop a stopper off a Bellikin, check to see if you're a winner. You can collect your free beer or $20 cash prize at the store nearest to you. If you win $100 or $1,000, redeem your prize at the nearest B&B sales center.
Promotion is valid until Saturday, March 27th or while supplies last.
Papa Stopper!
Bellikin, the beer of Belize.
Masks protect us from the spread of germs which can make us sick. Make sure your mask covers both your mouth and nose. Remember, don't touch your mask with your hands when it is on your face. Let's all wear our mask properly to stay safe and healthy. Belize Electricity Limited. We care about your safety.
Caused the intense flooding overnight in the western and southern parts of the country.
Yeah?
Do we need to renew the insurance policy?
The insurance policy?
Were impassable.
Oh, let me check.
Renew your policies, file a claim, and even send us a message using RFNG online.
No, we're good. It says we're covered.
Okay, great.
It pays to get it right with RFNG Insurance, a road group company.
If you have been directly exposed to the new coronavirus or have a history of travel in infected populated areas, it is recommended that you self-isolate. Identify a room to be used to self-isolate and limit contact with healthy persons. Keep away from older persons and persons who have medical conditions that affects their immune system. Monitor for any cold or flu-like symptom for up to 21 days and wash hands frequently with soap and water. If you become seriously ill, call your healthcare provider or 0800-664-2273 for guidance. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
In partnership with the British High Commission.
After over 3 months, the stalemate between the Public Service Committee and the government has finally come to an end. They had been unable to meet since November 5th because GOB was waiting for the Barrow-appointed members to resign, even though they were not required to with the change of government. But with urgent matters for the public service adding up, the government finally conceded. But whether it's for the long term or just the interim remains unclear. Their first meeting after that stalemate took place on February 19th, and the PSC attended to over 70 pending matters. Without their meeting, matters of promotions, demotions, pensions, and more could not have taken place for public servants. Reports say that the approval of a post for an acting director of health services was not approved. But still, the acting DHS, Dr. Melissa Diaz, has won a rare endorsement. In a letter sent to the Minister of Health, Michelle Shabat, on Thursday, the BMDA expressed their satisfaction with the management of the pandemic, with Dr. Diaz leading the charge as DHS. They said that the member doctors are pleased with the availability of PPEs as of recent and the quickness with which they are able to identify, isolate and treat COVID patients, which leads to a decrease in numbers. But even with that ringing endorsement, reports suggest that Dr. Diaz may not be long for the job and may be going back to her substantive post in the ministry. She would not confirm or deny that today when we asked via text for a comment. But the man she replaced, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, is still, so to speak, twisting in the wind. Sources tell us that he was today given a letter to consider accepting a demotion. Sources tell us he hasn't answered yet and is seeking the counsel of the Public Service Labor Union, who have complained bitterly about the ministry's lack of regard for a head of department in an established post. Imagine buying a piece of seafront property for only $2,000. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, that dream came through for somebody. And it's not just any seafront property, but reserved land in the West Landover community. The land was previously used by fishers to launch their boats, a practice that has been happening for years. As such, area rep Kareem Musa decided to uplift the area by adding stones where there was just mud. But only a day or two after adding the stones, the quote-unquote owners of the land placed boulders in front of the property, blocking off access. Boulders, according to Musa, that were taken from the fence of the adjoining park. In addition, the company added wooden posts to mark off the area. The West Landover residents immediately sounded the alarm since they lobbied for the area to become a reserve in the first place. And Musa says since it hasn't been de-reserved, the company that owns the land, Tech Multi Solutions Limited, needs to take the boulders off the property.
Last week, around Wednesday, I had lobbied the Belize City Council to get a donation of some material, some hardcore material, in order to grade the boat launch that sits in this natural reserve that extends from the Mohoki area all the way down to the University of Belize. This particular nature reserve is a protected area. It is the baby, the pride and the joy of the West Landover community. It offers great protection because of the mangrove and the ecosystem that sits around here. And so after we had graded the boat launch, which by the way has been in use for donkey's years, we're talking as far back as the 1980s or even before. The community was even established back then. There were only about 4 homes back here, and this boat launch has been in use since then. And so I want to make the point that this is an easement. This is a legal easement that the community has and the members of this community have for using this particular easement as far back as the 80s. Now, much to my shock and awe, after we graded the boat launch last week, I was notified that this particular area of the reserve had been issued, a title over this reserve had been issued by the past administration on the tail end of their administration. We're talking June of 2020, on their way out. And it is not as though they were not aware that this is a protected area because it is gazetted. And in order for you to de-reserve an area that is protected such as this one, you need to also gazette the fact that you're de-reserving it. And that was never done. And so what we have here today, the concerned residents have come out, they have asked for an audience with me because this has to be overturned one way or another. And I'm talking in the very least short term, this must be removed immediately. And so the private landowner who has this, and I'm told that it is a company, Tech Multi-Service Limited, that company, Tech, needs to take this down, is what they need to do. Because this is an easement that has been enjoyed by the residents of this community for so many years. And so, in the short term, that is the plan of action. But in the medium and long term, we intend to overturn this because it has to be fraught with illegality.
But the Belize City Council did not need to get involved after all, since immediately after the interview with Musa, the company sent a backhoe to remove the boulders. Barrow & Williams law firm also issued a demand notice on the 19th of February of this year, stating that they are aware of the damage and destruction to mangroves and the blocking of the public park and its nearby public access boat slip. Since Dolphin Park was declared a reserve in 2007 to protect the natural values, and since no permission was obtained from the Forestry Department to remove or destroy the mangrove trees, they are demanding that the perpetrators cease and desist the unlawful activities. The notice ends by saying that the law firm will proceed with further legal action if necessary. And while Mayor Bernard Wagner may not have to spend his last lap before municipals in a land dispute, he may have another dispute to deal with concerning the area that he resides. Wagner is a resident of Los Lagos, and that is the address he put down on nomination day. According to Chief Elections Officer Josephine Tamai, the nomination was rightly accepted, but the question now remains if an election petition would be warranted in a case like this, especially since the Belize City Council Act says that a member of the city must be disqualified if they have not ordinarily resided in Belize City for at least 1 year immediately preceding the date of the election, end quote. We asked Minister Karim Musa today, and he said the accusations are purely UDP mischief.
The UDP will try to stir up any sort of mud, as you can see from their team that they have put forward. It's a lot to be desired, to say the least, for their Belize City team. I don't know about the rest of teams. I'm talking about Belize City. I don't see Belize City voters going for them, so they have to try to grab at any political straw that they can. But if you were to look at the former mayor, Mayor Zenaida Moya, also she did not reside in Belize City. She lives up on the Northern Highway across the bridge. And so there is legislation in place that speaks to qualification to run for mayor and for a councillor in Belize City. And like you rightly said, it only requires for you to be a voter in Belize, not in Belize City. And so I think the Elections and Boundaries Office is quite in order and quite right interpreting the law that in fact he does qualify to run as mayor.
On Friday, we brought you a recap of the PUP's first 100 days in government. A roundup of triumphs, failures and redos, all before the first budget has been prepared. Tonight, Prime Minister John Bersenio is speaking for himself, yes, largely complaining about the financial mess that he says the UDP left them in, but also highlighting the efforts of his ministries to make as much COVID time incremental progress as possible.
Our health team is leading the way to flattening the COVID curve. We have amended the legislation to strengthen the Public Accounts Committee. Our agriculture team is aggressively promoting our farm-to-table policy. Our National Security Ministry is moving towards innovation. Our Foreign Trade Ministry is opening up markets for our products. Our Education Ministry is preparing for schools to reopen safely. And the Economic Recovery Team are all hands on deck to implement our recovery strategy. Our vaccine plan is ready and being fine-tuned for when the first vaccine arrives next month. These things were possible because we consulted, and we're facing the challenges head-on, using our Plan Belize as our North Star. Let us continue to reach out to each other, especially the many struggling to put food on the table in this difficult time. Week by week, we make progress.
Arsenio told this newsroom that he would be having his first press conference this week, and we're waiting for that date. And we asked the Minister of Home Affairs and New Growth Industries about his first 100 days in office. Musa said that his main mission has been to change the culture of the police department to make it more community friendly. He has made a few steps towards this, but says he is hopeful that much more can be done during the next 5 years.
At least from a ministry perspective, I can tell you that it's been a very fruitful experience for me as the new Minister of Home Affairs. We have already instituted some beneficial changes, in my opinion. The disbanding of the GSU and the introduction of a new unit, the GI3, that is underway. We have a situation that concerned the welfare of police officers who, as you know, were a part of the population most affected by COVID. We had at one point 300 police officers who were suffering with COVID positive. They were COVID positive. And 2 of our officers died as well from COVID. And so we introduced a ticketing system that now limits their interaction with the public. That is something, again, very positive. We have been liaising with various embassies like the U.S. Embassy to come up with witness protection program. So it's not just limited to the enforcement aspect, but also trying to secure convictions in our judiciary. That is something that we are very proud of, working on that type of legislation. And of course, overall, changing the culture and the approach of police officers. That is something that I find is significant as the new Minister of Home Affairs for my particular mandate, because prior to the election, I can tell you that I have lawsuits, including the loss of my dear friend Alison Major, to the hands of a police officer. And so when I come into this position, that is my approach. That's a song that I will sing day in and day out to my police officers, that you have to approach people with respect, with manners. I understand that at times you will be attacked and you have to defend yourself. But for the most part, we have to be able to change this culture of abuse and brutality within the department. It's not going to happen overnight. A lot of people think that, oh, because Karim is a new minister, I'm going to change the way 2,200 officers operate, when in fact this has been something ingrained in them for years, for decades. So trying to change that culture is a huge part of my mandate, and I look forward to, at the end of these 5 years, having a reformed police department. We've been cracking down, Courtney, on corrupt police officers, especially those involved in the drug trade. If you would recall from your newscast, 2 police officers have since been busted transporting cannabis into the country. Police officers were also involved in the plane landing. They have been arrested and charged. And so there is this zero tolerance approach that we want to put in place against corruption and against abuse.
And while Musa works on reforming the department, he will have to do so on a budget. As the government continues its budget consultations, according to the minister, there will be cuts across all ministries. But he says that while his ministry may not see a lower dollar figure from government, they will not be getting additional funds to pay 200 new officers.
As you know, we are right now enlisting an additional 225 police officers in the coming weeks and months ahead for training at the Belize Training Academy, the Police Training Academy. And so you might not be seeing the cut, but the fact is we are getting an increase in the number of officers. And so while there should be an increase in the budget, we are going to try to keep that number very, very low. Because like I said, we are in very austere times and we have to take austere action.
A percentage of 15 was thrown out last week in terms of cuts across the board. Is that correct?
That is something, like I said, it is in discussion, but that's not something finalized. And so this week, Cabinet will be meeting to discuss the details of what types of cuts are expected at each ministry level. And so that is where that exercise will take place.
And even without the budget cut, the new officers will be a huge help to the already thinly spread human resources of the department. while nighttime crimes are down, presumably due to the former 8 p.m. and current 10 p.m. curfews. Criminals are boldly committing offenses during the day. Over the past few weeks, there have been increased shootings, some turned murders, and robberies happening without the darkness being used as an advantage. Police Minister Karim Musa says the ministry is well aware and is working to cut down on daytime crimes.
Of course, we have increased patrols in the hotspot areas of the country. Part of our launch, our GIS forum, the Belize Crime Observatory, what they are responsible for is gathering data on where it is that all of these crimes are occurring in our country, the consistency of the area in which crimes are occurring. And so we are using scientific data, scientific information in order to lead us in the police department to put more patrols in certain areas. And so while it is that we are upping the amount of patrols in particular areas, we have to be behind the criminals because they may go into a different area to commit crime. So that is something that we are enhancing, again, using technology and innovation.
And speaking of curfew, when will this one be over? Minister Musa explained that we are simply not there yet. But he says he may be there soon since we are on the cusp of receiving vaccines for the virus. He mentioned that if enough of the population is vaccinated, the regulations can become more relaxed. But for now, there will be a revisiting of the regulations that are currently in place.
It is up until March the 2nd. I am being told that we will have a revision, a revisiting of the curfew and all of the regulations in the weeks to come. And so definitely come March 2nd, you will be seeing a revisiting of the regulations. I cannot say that we will be moving the curfew. It is something that we believe has been working well in terms of keeping our numbers down, especially since we are right at the cusp of getting vaccinations. If it is that we can get our population vaccinated, then we don't have to have these rigid curfews in place. And so that is our end goal, to keep the numbers down, which unfortunately sometimes does require keeping the curfew in place. But that is the end goal, to get our citizens vaccinated, and thereafter we can look at lifting curfews.
Finally, we asked the minister about his recent appearance with Lord Michael Ashcroft at the police department's new gym. While Lord Ashcroft seemingly provided the finance for the gym without any strings attached, some wondered if he was pulling the PUP's strings by financing their campaign last year. According to Musa, he has not received a cent from Ashcroft, but the government is planning on enacting the campaign finance legislation to ensure transparency with how the government spends its money.
Unbeknown to me, when I went to the opening of the gym, the Fit for Duty gym at the Queen Street Police Station, I wasn't aware that Mr. Ashcroft was going to be there. And so I was surprised by that. But nonetheless, we know that he had a very rich history, so to speak, with the last administration. He got quite a bit of money from all the legal battles with Dean Barrow and his administration. And so moving forward, we have to be very careful with dealing with all of these investors in our country. But what I can tell you is I personally have never gotten a dollar from Michael Ashcroft, any kind of campaign contribution, none whatsoever. We are a pro-political reform party, and that was part of our agenda. So these are all things, as you can see from the last House meeting, we have begun. Starting out with the Public Accounts Committee, reconstituting the Public Accounts Committee to include more people on it, more stakeholders, as well as to make it public. To me, that's a critical part of transparency and accountability, is for the public to know and to have direct insight as to how you're spending money for the government. So that is something already in place. And of course, campaign finance legislation is something that we're looking at as well.
And we take a break now. When we come back, BTL's profits plummet. We'll tell you by how much and why. As Paul Williams says, police did not kill Rafael Garrido. Don't go away.
At Benquip, we offer a complete line of Honda products featuring the most trusted and reliable line of motorcycles in Belize. For outdoor and marine recreation, we have Polaris ATVs and UTVs, Volvo Pentamarine Solutions, Honda Outboards, and Best Sport Kayaks. When it's time to service your vehicle or equipment, you can find the brands you trust at Benquip. We carry a large inventory of Castrol oils, NGK spark plugs, and a full range of cleaning products from Magic. Get power when you need it with trade winds and Honda generators. For those businesses looking for increased productivity and a safe working environment, our proven and respective line of TCM forklifts will not let you down. We also have trimmers and lawnmowers from Honda and Husqvarna, so you can keep your yard and surroundings properly maintained. So visit Benquip today at 3 miles on the Philip Golson Highway to get the equipment, parts, and service you need.
Start your year with a win with Bellikin and its new promotion, Papa Stopper. Yes, sir. Every time you pop one stopper off our Bellikin, make sure you check under the crown. If you see one bottle shape, you win one free Bellikin. If you see one ball, you win $20. If you see one star, you win $100. And once you see one diamond, you win $1,000. Sure, Bellikin again, you know. Papa Stopper.
When you pop a stopper off a Bellikin, check to see if you're a winner. You can collect your free beer or $20 cash prize at the store nearest to you. If you win $100 or $1,000, redeem your prize at the nearest B&B sales center.
Promotion is valid until Saturday, March 27th or while supplies last.
Papa Stopper.
Bellikin, the beer of Belize.
In more crime news, there was a non-fatal traffic accident that occurred on Saturday morning around 9. A vehicle ran a stop sign, causing a collision on Bishop Martin Street in Santa Elena. The driver that was hit, 24-year-old Miriam Banos, was rushed to the hospital after her vehicle landed in a nearby drain. ACP Joseph Maivet has the full details.
Upon arrival, they met and spoke to one Miriam Banos, who indicated to police that she was driving on Bishop Martin Street towards Ricana Street, and upon reaching that junction, she had the right of way, and whilst proceeding through the junction, she was ran into by a red Toyota four-door driven at the time by one Ruben Santos of 7 Miles Village, Cayo District. This accident caused her to lose control and hit one Benjamin Rodas, who was riding his motorcycle at the time. Both Ms. Banos and Rodas were taken to the San Ignacio Community Hospital, where they were treated, and their injuries were classified as, Ms. Banos' injury was classified as harm, whilst Rodas' injury was classified as wounding. An IP was served on the driver, and he admitted to be at fault, and the matter is said that it will be settled through insurance.
Might he have been, he was at fault indeed, but I noticed there's a fence right at the corner which limits the visibility coming out of the corner. Might that have been a complication?
It could have been, but if he did not have the right of way, then he should have stopped at that intersection.
The driver of the pickup, 63-year-old Ruben Santos, is a relative of area rep Alex Balona. On Saturday, the new BTL Board of Directors chaired the first annual general meeting as the leaders of the nationalized telecommunications company. On Saturday, they gave their first full accounting to the shareholders, who had to tune in virtually to comply with the COVID regulations against mass gatherings. But the lack of face-to-face interaction did not stop the new management team from opening up to stakeholders about why the company's profit is down from $17 million to $2.5 million, a 77% decline. Daniel Ortiz attended the virtual meeting to find out why.
On Saturday morning, over 40 persons tuned into a teleconference call via Microsoft Teams to participate in this virtual annual general meeting. The new BTL board, appointed by the recently elected Briceño administration, had to account to the shareholders who are watching their investments in uncertain times.
I'm sure you can all understand it was quite an undertaking, trust me, to do all the things that we needed to do to get here today and to be able to communicate with you.
In his first AGM as chairman, Lizarraga quickly cut to the chase about the state of affairs that he and the new management met when they got into office, and the challenges they must tackle head-on to improve this national utility company's profitability.
Scrutiny of the financials revealed that in addition to an outstanding liability of $19 million in unpaid dividends to the government of Belize, there were unrealistic expense provisioning for bad debts. This inadequacy contributed to an overly aggressive and unrealistic portrayal of profits over the periods 2018-2019 and 2019-2020. Returns on equity over the past few years were dismal and continued falling, and reports were heavily focused on growing EBITDA. This is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And these reports did not focus on unsustainable growth in expenses, which resulted in declining trend in profits over the years.
The CEO presented a more detailed assessment in his review of the company's financial past, dating back to the last 10 years before. He started by discussing investments in network upgrades, such as the 4G LTE mobile network and the fiber to the home internet service. And for all these upgrades, the company has a hefty amount of debt to pay back.
These investments will have required large cash requirements. They have depleted cash reserves, whilst increasing the long-term portfolio and requiring the use of overdraft facilities. And that is shown here, whereby we have increased, and you see the black line again showing an increase from left to right on your screen. And this has been in terms of increase in long-term liabilities to finance, one, the $50 million 4G LTE advanced network, the $96 million fiber to the home network, which is called DigiNet or Digitel. We've invested $22 million on the convergent billing project, and we invested $18 million on the subsea fiber cable to San Pedro, amongst other projects.
From BTL's internal assessment, its revenue growth isn't matching the increase in debt servicing costs.
When you invest in infrastructure, the goal of it is for us to be able to increase the revenues. And what does this show? Well, what the current graph shows is that whilst there has been significant growth in the network infrastructure, the growth in revenues year on year has fluctuated, and in some years been negative. And that can be seen from 2015 to 2019, where you see a steep decline in the overall growth of gross revenues. Well, the decrease in prices on services due to significant competition from the other mobile provider, we have internet service providers and cable operators, has created a race to the bottom on prices, which, whilst it has benefited consumers, has impacted the revenue growth overall of BTL. Expenses have outpaced the growth in revenues over the past 10 years. And as you can see the trend line, it shows that it has had a negative or an adverse effect on the overall profitability of the company. So this decrease in net profitability, again, is due to the fact that the expenses have been greater than the growth in revenues. Despite the decrease in net profitability, though, the company continued during all those years to declare annual dividends greater than the minimum required of 45% of net income, and in some cases as high as 67%.
Despite these challenges, this new BTL management team thinks that they have ideas to turn this resilient company around. These are a few of the ideas they pitched to the shareholders.
We have put a bubble chart, and these are new initiatives. These are new revenue opportunities, examples of these, and other cost optimization that can be done and will be done. And what we have placed it is the size of the bubble means the impact, the positive impact to overall achievement of what we have. Small business, we believe that presently, because of COVID-19, there is a large market to digitize. We know everything for the most part now has been ramped up. We know that the COVID-19 will not go away anytime soon. We know that this year we will be under the same, when I say this year, I mean this new fiscal year, this new calendar year will be under continued pressure as we can expect. So small businesses will have to ramp up in terms of digitization, what they need to offer. And we believe that we're well poised with our suite of services and new services that we need to bring in to be able to offer. E-commerce is something big as well for us. DigiHome, we will begin offering services that go into the home as well. And lastly, I think one of the most exciting ones is the DigiWallet, a mobile financial services platform that we will be offering that will allow us to be able to use our cell phones as your new wallet.
We know the road ahead will not be easy, and we are now operating in a considerable different environment with additional economic headwinds that did not exist last year. Despite these circumstances, we remain optimistic about BTL's future. BTL has been and is a resilient company with a stronghold in Belize's marketplace.
Reporting for 7 News, Daniel Ortiz.
In financial year 2019-2020, which is mostly before COVID, revenue grew by 4% while expenses grew by 10%. The forecast is to lower expenses in the current fiscal year by 22% and increase profits by 125%. But while the company is expecting a growth in profits for this financial year, which soon finishes, they still have a major headache to deal with. They have come clean to the shareholders that a segment of Belizean customers owe them a total of $44 million in arrears that they are trying to collect. Under the previous board, there was a series of moves to change the company's billing processes. And it appears that the rollout of their new systems did not go according to plan. And so some customers weren't obliged to pay for services already rendered. On Saturday afternoon, in a virtual interview after the AGM, Chairman Lizarraga explained what occurred some 2 to 3 years ago.
BTL embarked on an exercise to consolidate its collection software, its billing software into one. It had several and it wanted to put it into one system. And when that was commissioned, it was commissioned with a clear roadmap and a clear plan. And the plan changed. And certain upgrades were offered in this period of transitioning, and it complicated matters. And a series of decisions really eventually led to the collapse of this plan. The end net effect was that BTL found itself in a position where it could not disconnect people who had not paid. Subsequent to that, the decision was made not to collect from people. And that decision carried forward until anyhow we're here where BTL has some $40 million in receivables accumulated over the last couple of years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Over the last 3 years. BTL has been working with its clients, and we've put a lot of these people, and we're trying to put most of them on a payment plan. And we're in the process of continuing to work on this system so that we are in a position to clearly tell people, look, here's your bill for this month, at least take care of the bill for this month and make plans to pay the bills for the previous months, the outstanding arrears.
The chairman says that some of the customers are cooperating by agreeing to payment plans. And like all companies, both locally and international, BTL has also been hit by the economic impacts of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The company is reporting that at the end of January of 2021, their gross revenues are down by $27 million or 19% when compared to last year, January. Here's what the chairman had to say about how they account for that decrease.
We have seen certainly revenues decline, obviously. We have had a decline in revenue of about 27 million or 19%, which is pretty much in line with what's been happening globally in Belize, no? Our GDP numbers are more or less the same. Our prepaid revenue has come down, and we think that in some part, the lack of economic activity, especially in the tourism sector, has impacted on this. You don't have as much people out, running around and making phone calls and things like that.
But the staff at BTL were prepared for that financial hit, and so they managed to decrease the company's operational expenses by $22.2 million for this financial year. The chairman publicly thanked them for the initiatives which allowed the company to minimize the impacts of the decrease in gross revenues.
We have embarked on a very aggressive, like I said, deceleration of OPEX, operational expenses, and we've tried to streamline and renegotiate. There's a host of efforts that were made as part of this cost optimization strategy, and it went from asking for discounts, fighting for discounts when we purchased. It went to renegotiating and reducing costs in several areas. Certainly we became a lot leaner in the way we spent monies and negotiated, because everybody think that BTL was this cash cow, and that we have this lot of money, and it's absolutely not true. We cut back on some of the services that we had that we didn't need. we began to do things in-house rather than paying people outside to do it. We saved some monies in decommissioning old systems that we had and trying to move people over to new, more efficient systems. And this will have a long-term impact on our operational activities too, because they're more energy efficient and they're greener and all of those things. So it was a combination of a lot of things. Had we continued on the same path we were on, we would have lost $16 million this year. So I really commend the staff and the workers of BTL for having embraced this opportunity to save money and to turn the company around.
And during the interview, the topic of Nestor Vasquez, the former chairman of BTL, came up. Vasquez stepped down from the company in September of last year after allegations emerged that he misused the company's corporate credit card and ran up hundreds of thousands of dollars in bills on it. When he was asked about the matter, the new chairman briefly said that BTL is still pursuing that matter with intention of recovering the full sum that is owed.
Is there any current update on the Net Vasquez situation?
What I can say is that this matter is with our attorneys, and it is, as the reports that I received at the last board meeting a couple of days ago, is that we're proceeding with the matter, and we're going to take all actions necessary for the recovery of those sums.
We understand that Vasquez has repaid somewhere in the vicinity of $300,000, but the matter is now under review by accountants because of differing figures coming out of two audits assessing his indebtedness. Switching back now to crime news, questions remain for the Garrido family about the nature of the death of their son Rafael Patrick Garrido, whose body was found in a shallow grave near Belmopan. When we spoke to them last week, they insinuated that police were either involved in the young man's death or participated in a cover-up. And this morning, when Jose Vasquez raised their concerns with the Compol, he called it the accusations plainly slanderous.
I have read every statement in respect of that matter. And at no juncture in any of those statements I could see any evidence to suggest that any police officer was involved in that young man's disappearance and murder. People need to be careful, and even the media needs to be careful of giving eartime to people who just want to slander others. I find it to be very, I understand, but being a grieving mother is no justification to slander people without evidence. When that young man who was supposedly the person who was with Garrido allegedly dropped off that person somewhere, what is there to show that after he dropped off that person was picked up by the police or anybody else? As far as I am concerned, the person who was last seen with Garrido is the prime suspect until he can prove the contrary.
No, sir, but would you at least accept that perhaps the officer in question, or the officer whose name has been called, you said unfairly, that perhaps a test could be done of his firearm to confirm if there's nothing to hide? Well, there's no problem. A test could be done of his firearm to see if it matches. To fire the fatal shot. Was any expended shell found? I don't think it was, no. You only test a firearm, Jules, to compare ballistic. If an expended shell was found on the scene, you take a person's gun to see if that gun discharged that weapon. When it comes to police officers, these police officers' weapons are fired regularly. So even if you go to the lab to do a test, the test will only be to ascertain whether or not the gun was fired recently, but not to say if that was the gun that was used to kill somebody. So what is the use? Officers fire their weapons often, sir?
Of course, police officers goes on range.
As we've told you, Garrido's postmortem certified his death to be caused by traumatic shock due to a gunshot wound to the head. And with all the crime we told you about in this newscast, there were no murders to report this weekend. There, however, is a shooting, but fortunately the victim survived. He is Walter Longsworth, and he was shot on Saturday night on Partridge Street Extension. Senior Superintendent Gilberto Romero has the preliminary details on the investigation.
He reported that he was in a yard on Partridge Street when a male person approached him, fired several shots, and caused injuries to him. He is presently at the KHMH in a stable condition.
Are you all able to say if he was a target?
At this time, we do not know. He was in that yard when the person just came and fired shots.
Were other people in the yard?
Yeah, there are other people, yes.
Okay, do you know if it's related to gang rivalries?
We do not know at this time. Investigators on the ground trying to ascertain the circumstances regarding this shooting.
He is known to you all?
He's not known, no.
There was a chopping on Saturday night in the Kaya village of Kamalote that has left a 36-year-old man in a critical condition at the KHMH. Police say that at around 10:30 they were called to a residence in the Young Bank area, and that's when they found Jose Gonzalez lying inside the yard with a chop wound to the head. The head of the National Criminal Investigations Branch told the press this morning that, according to their investigations, he may have been attacked by someone he was having a few drinks with.
On Saturday last, sometime around 10:30 p.m., police were called to the Young Bank area, just outside Kamalote village, where upon arrival they met one Jose Alberto Gonzalez with apparent chop wounds lying inside a yard. He was immediately transported to the Western Regional Hospital and later to the Karlushna Memorial Hospital, where he remains in a critical condition. What we know so far is that Gonzalez, along with two other persons, were socializing at a nearby yard when they apparently got into an altercation, which caused him to receive those injuries. We do have two of those persons in custody, and it is expected that charges will be preferred against them later today.
What was the nature of the argument, and was alcohol involved?
We have not been able to ascertain the nature of the argument. Yes, alcohol was involved as they were socializing.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness is reporting that once again for this month, the country is enjoying another 5-day streak without any COVID deaths. You'll remember that from February 10th to the 16th, no deaths were reported, and apart from the first death reported on February 17th, there have not been any others so far. Here's more from the Health Ministry's Information Officer, who breaks down today's and yesterday's numbers.
A total of 484 samples were tested. Out of this, 11 samples have resulted positive for COVID-19. There are 66 individuals newly under investigation. There are 38 new recoveries to report. Today, we also report that 7 infected persons are hospitalized. Unfortunately, 4 of these individuals are being treated at the intensive care unit. There are no new deaths to report. The cumulative report we are presenting is from March 2020, when we had our first case. The new total of active cases now stands at 154. These are those persons who have been confirmed and are within the time frame to transmit the virus. To date, 80,695 samples have been tested nationally. Out of this, 12,255 samples have resulted positive for COVID-19. A total of 314 deaths have been reported, but we are pleased to report that there are 11,787 total recoveries.
And that's all we have for you for tonight. Thanks for watching with your news. I'm Endura Craig. Remember that you can read a full transcript of this news at 7newsbelize.com and see our streaming video of this newscast on our Facebook page. Remember now to wash your hands, to wear a mask at all times in public, and to keep your social distance. Curfew starts at 10 p.m. tonight, so please stay inside. Join me back here tomorrow at 6, and until then, have a good night.